The name Gold Weaver was given to Lucie because we found that the standard of work, the way she actually spun the gold, had a magical quality about it. It was almost mythological in a way. So we had imagined, having met Lucie in her hometown of Lucerne, living by the lakeside, we saw in our mind this incredible creature sitting on a toadstool, weaving away at her gold, and we thought, wow, we've got a name for her collection, the Gold Weaver of Lucerne, and from there on she became known as the Gold Weaver.
Gold has a mystical, magical attraction, and gold has an aura and a color, and it radiates. It's more of a feeling than a look, really. It's something that has to be experienced. And that is a moment which I love, where the gold starts melting and there is a sort of a whooshing, fiery, primordial sense about it. When I have to move the crucible and this glistening drop of gold, because I need to get the metals to mix, and then I pour it into the mold, and that makes pencil thick bars. And then I start milling them to make long bars. And when they have reached the thickness that I want, which is usually about double as much as the wire that I start with, I will anneal them to get the molecular structure to resettle. I then use the draw bench to pull the wire because it's much too hard to pull by hand. I do that step by step, each hole, and it gets thinner and thinner. And every so often I need to anneal the wire so that the molecular structure can settle again. There is a point where the wire is too long to be on the draw bench, and then I have to switch to the vise. I put the draw plate into a vise and pull it that way. As it gets longer, I have to open the balcony door so that I can stand on the balcony. And if the wire needs to be really thin, I haven't got enough room onto the balcony. I'd fall into the garden. So I have to turn around and pull into the hallway until I reach the desired gauge. It may be more appropriate to ask, how did goldsmithing find me, than how did I get to be a goldsmith? Because when I was very young, I did intend to become a goldsmith. One of the things, I wanted to be a lawyer or a weaver. And my father said, unless you have the talent that takes you right to the top, you'll starve, my girl. After high school, I did a secretarial training, and then I got to work for a newspaper as a secretary, and I give my age away when I say that we were still printing with lead. And we had a foreign correspondent who would phone in his reports from Paris, and the foreign editor was crawling up the walls when I was meant to type these reports. And he demanded that if she has late shift, someone else has to be on standby. And so that didn't work for very long, so I was let go. But I tried all sorts of things. I did hotel managing school, I did copywriting, I even learned how to drive a lorry, a truck. And I was also very interested in the English language, and I became a translator and an interpreter.
I've always said that it's easier to list the things she hasn't done yet than to name what she has. And then she wanted to do a course on foot massage or some such thing. And then I don't remember all the other stuff. It was terrible.
Ich weiß nicht mehr was alles, es ist furchtbar gewesen.
Ich habe das Gefühl, sie ist so vielseitig interessiert.
I feel that she has so many different interests and demands so much perfection from herself that whatever she took on, she was sure to fail, because she simply couldn't achieve that degree of perfection. It's only now, goldsmithing, where she has to achieve it every day with those tiny little links. She no longer fails, because that is where she can truly work to her own standard of perfection.
Later on, I did a goldsmithing evening hobby course, and that was so fascinating and so intriguing, and it gripped me so that I didn't want to do anything else.
Und dann hat sie irgendwann mit bald 30.
And when she was almost 30, she wanted to do an apprenticeship as a goldsmith. And we thought, ugh, that too? Oh well, it won't matter now. But then suddenly it clicked. Suddenly we saw something was really happening, and she worked with incredible tenacity.
I finished my apprenticeship in '92, and I wanted to go and work for another goldsmith to broaden my experience. But then I got the opportunity to participate in an exhibition together with my father, who's a sculptor, and my brother, who's a photographer. And I needed all the hours that God sent to produce the collection that I was going to exhibit, because I had nothing when I first got out of apprenticeship.
I was there with my husband, and we were completely taken with Lucie's jewellery. I have a very good friend who has a store in London, and I told him about Lucie.
In the preparation to the exhibition, we had just done the photograph for the invitation. We went for lunch with Ursula and Philip, her husband, and I was showing her the photograph, and Philip said, "Oh, you need to be Meghan, Paris, New York." And I thought it was very amusing, and I laughed loudly. But Ursula took it seriously and said, "Do you think I should tell Mark?"
He seemed interested. But Lucie was very bohemian at that time, whereas the jeweller was one of those really English gentlemen. So I remember saying to him, "Don't look at Lucie, just look at her work." He knew immediately that it was unique.
Well, I was very impressed by her work. It was extremely intricate and obviously done with great love. It was impossible to think of her manufacturing gold. Really, she was weaving the strands of gold as other women might weave dreams.
So since 1994, we have been looking after Lucie here in London and representing her at Bentley & Skinner, Jewellers by Royal Appointment.
It carried on in the same intensity. A year after, I had a representative in Zurich, then came New York. I was asked to join exhibitions in art galleries and museums, which I'm always very happy to do. Then came Hong Kong, Seattle, Los Angeles, other places in America, and it seemed that Philip's vision had come true.
I often get groups coming to visit my studio, and once someone called and said he was the president of something. I simply didn't understand, so I said, "President of what?" He repeated it, and I still didn't understand, so I thought, well, all right, doesn't matter what he's president of. Anyway, the group of about 15 people turned up, and while I was showing them round, a woman asked me, "Do you have any children?" And I said, "Yes, 2 of them." Then she said, "Are they as talented as you?" And I replied, "Well, they would be, but I managed to beat it out of them." Talent isn't enough. It takes tenacity and toughness. If someone wants to be an artist because he thinks he won't have to work so hard, he'd be better off working at a factory like Viscosi. Then they all gave me this peculiar look, and I said, "Do any of you work at Viscosi by any chance?" They all did. It was the Viscosi management team.
Sind alle von der Viscosi gewesen, Kadergruppe.
Vom Vater her habe ich eine Unterstützung.
The support I got from my father was very ambivalent. He worked on the assumption that an artist who is encouraged and built up will never be strong. He thinks a plant that hasn't had to battle its way through the soil will wither at the top. So you have to provide some resistance, and if he still wants it and goes for it regardless, then you can support him. That's how I experienced it anyway.
I was born in Lucerne, Switzerland, where I grew up with my parents, my brother, a cat, 2 budgies, a guinea pig and a raven. But that bird is a whole separate story. We all lived in a fabulous old sandstone house in a huge wild garden. I did all my schooling in Lucerne, and I was a keen member of the Scout movement, which I have fond memories of, and I still have many good friends from those early years.
It was always striking to see the tiny little drawings that she used to do when she was a child. Even then, she used to produce tiny books with all sorts of things in them, and she had endless patience for all that stuff. You can see very clearly that she has enormous skill with her hands, in the sense that this little mobile, which I have kept for so long in a showcase, is extremely intricate work. Work which I would never have been able to accomplish myself, because I'm all fingers and thumbs.
Feinmotorik niemals könnte so erstellen.
Damals ist sie eigentlich immer so in die Gruppen.
When we were in our teens, she was always the youngest in groups she found interesting, and she was determined to take part if she thought it looked exciting. And she always had to take something along with her, to work on with her hands. It might be little beads, not that she made silly little bracelets or that sort of thing, but always something significant. She could make whole pieces of clothing out of thousands, or probably tens of thousands of little beads. And I think that's interesting when we see what she does professionally these days in her art as a goldsmith. These objects don't live from the shaping of a single element, but from their integration. The smallest individual components join together to form a whole. Almost like in nature, like in Lucie's spiderwebs. That is very characteristic of Lucie's work.
When I got into my teens, I was bound and determined to be my own person, and I went to outrageous extremes to demonstrate it. I even became a kind of punk before I could know that punk existed.
It was me who gave her that ridiculous notion. I suggested handcuffs. So she went out and bought a pair of real English handcuffs, put the complete pair on one arm, then locked them and threw the key in the river. She was wearing them for ages, and eventually we had to have them removed by a locksmith. Lucie, in what she calls her punk phase, is a Lucie who does exactly what she wants, directly and without compromise. When she decides to go to school barefoot, and to do it for the whole year, that's exactly what she does. And it really is for the entire year.
Also weder Schuhe, noch Strümpfe, noch Socken.
No shoes, no stockings, no socks, regardless of whether it was freezing, raining or snowing. I suppose it helped her find herself and develop her own personality. And I have to say, I was positively impressed, because our society really needs people like that.
Absolut positiv beeindruckt, weil derige Leute braucht es doch in unserer Gesellschaft.
I remember she had a fantastic bar, and we all used to come round and drink it dry because she made all these exotic drinks. And everywhere we went, she'd say, "Oh, you know that green stuff? Can you bring me back a bottle of that green stuff? I want to make this special cocktail." So we'd be going looking for this green stuff or orange stuff or coloured stuff.
Chain is a chain is a chain, and you know, recently we had a fantastic article about Lucie in the Financial Times, and a well-known jewellery writer, Vivian Becker, actually talked about chains, and Lucie's chains were mentioned in this article to say the chain is no longer a chain for chain's sake, to suspend something from it. It's actually a work of art in its own field.
I have always seen chains as a piece of jewellery in their very own right, and I have always been interested in patterns who were capable of making a statement, and I'm very happy that it's becoming a trend now.
I knew Bentley and Skinner, the jewellers. They're big ballet fans and they come to ballet a lot, and I think they see the relation between jewellery and dance and the lines that you make, and I suppose the dedication that goes into both works, and introduced me to Lucie at a lovely reception, and they just said it would be lovely if we could name a piece after you. It just seems apt that a dancer should have jewellery that's named, so I feel very fortunate that I'm even down there on all her pieces, which are quite stunning.
I first heard about Lucie when some great friends of ours called the Gosens came to stay, and Sally was wearing the most beautiful jewellery I'd ever seen, and I instantly looked at it and thought, I have to have. And from that moment I've been completely hooked on her jewellery.
We're all too used to disposable things. You know, you have a fridge which lasts for 5 years and it's all prefabricated, it's all mass-made, and you have jewellery which is basically made in the same way in many ways. And with Lucie's work, you know that someone has worked on this piece of jewellery, and it's just one person who's made it, and I think that today is really quite unusual. People say that things are handmade, but they might be hand-finished, but they're not handmade. And I think that you can feel that in her work.
Before I can make a chain, I have to decide which alloy I'm going to use, and I like using my own 20-carat alloy because I particularly like the color and the aura that it has and the heft, and also I like that it has its own intrinsic chemical signature. It is my own alloy, it could be traced back to me. To make an alloy in gold, I start with the pure gold and the pure silver and the pure copper. And I mill the gold into thin strips so that I can cut it into pieces. And when I have the pieces, I have to weigh them very carefully because an alloy obviously has to always be the same. My mother came from a very long line of artists, And she taught me independence, strength, and how to speak my mind. She even tried to teach me manners. Sadly, she passed away before knowing that I would follow in her footsteps and do jewellery too. From my father, I received a sense of humour, more independence, and an appreciation for friends and friendships. He's a well-known sculptor and a very well-liked man.
Having a famous father behind you obviously leads to a certain amount of pressure. What I was very much able to absorb is the creative sense, and particularly the way of seeing things. That I consider doing something because I believe it's worth doing, because I like it, not because of whether or not I will be able to sell it. All that comes later.
Das kommt dann später.
My brother went on his own journey and became a wonderful and successful photographer. We certainly share a commitment to give the best that we can. For example, my brother does my photography, and I never need to ask, do you think we can do this better? He's already doing it.
Sie hat eine klare Vorstellung, was für ein Bild sie haben.
She has a clear idea of the picture she wants, and sometimes you have to nudge her into realizing that her vision isn't quite feasible. But the picture we end up with is the best that can be done.
Das Optimum ist, was man überhaupt kann. Schmuckfotografie ist natürlich ganz eigen.
Photographing jewellery is a discipline all of its own, because we are in a macro area where even the tiniest detail is important. If she has a snake, we have to see how we can bring out what is natural about the creature, but abstract it at the same time.
Und dass wir noch die Schlange auf dem Sand haben,
and that we have a serpent on sand, where the sand has female contours, where the whole Bible comes into play. There are lots of symbolisms layered one behind the other, which you don't need to see, but you can sense them.
Aber man nimmt sie wahr. Und so entstehen die Geschichten, oder dass ein Wasserfall.
Like the chains which represent a waterfall, evoking the feeling they give you when they touch your skin. That's what I try to put across in these photographs. And not only that the chains look fantastic.
Und nicht nur, dass es toll aussieht.
Out of this wire I can make all sorts of chains. For the troubadour chain, for instance, I wind the wire around the mandrel in a spiral shape and I cut it into 2.5 turn pieces. And then I feed them into each other, one vertically, one horizontally. And then I solder where they join. In the meantime, I take wire and I cut it into very precise size pieces to make the beads, so that the beads will all be the same size, and I melt them on a piece of charcoal. And then I take the ends of the chain, flatten it, and position the beads so that the beautiful round side is outside and the flat side joins the chain, and I solder it that way.
When you're wearing it, it also feels somehow special. It's very tactile. The ring I always find myself playing with. There's a weight and a heaviness and a beauty to every piece that makes it all the more special to wear.
Normally I start with round or oval shaped pieces, but here I'm using a jig to shape a very special shaped link for the melody chain, and it gets sawed open and then soldered before it gets shaped. One necklace which I designed for Darcy Bustle, a principal dancer with the Royal Ballet, and I call it a Darcy Bustle chain, starts its life too as a spiral. Here I cut longer pieces, bring the ends round, solder them and shape them into a flower or a star.
I suppose it just feels me. The nice thing, I don't feel like I'm trying to be somebody else when I wear it. It feels totally natural on my skin, and it's something that that I'd feel comfortable every day wherever I was. It doesn't matter if I was in a market, or a car yard, or or even in Buckingham Palace.
One of the other wonderful things about Lucie's jewellery is it's always incredibly versatile. You can make two pieces into one or into two or sometimes three, so you get more options.
You can start with a small piece, then she can make a bit more for you and you can add it into that, and it goes on. It's like Meccano, very expensive form of Meccano, but it makes it very usable and very collectible.
It reminds me of feeling young and fresh. I suppose because it resembles a daisy chain, and it's just very original and different from anything that's out there. It's just nice to wear.
In a further development of this chain, the Darcy Bustle chain, I have incorporated stones, and I have currently got a utility patent pending for it. It means a lot to me that we're now all able to come back together and share exciting projects such as joint exhibitions. It is a great privilege for me to be able to show my work alongside that of my fathers and my brothers.
Ich bin
On one occasion we were able to put together an exhibition at the Schloss Meggenhorn and decided to include our ancestors. We knew that many of them were artists in their time, our grandfather, our grandparents on both sides, our great-grandparents. Mainly on my wife's side, all of them were artists. Her father was a famous painter of miniature portraits. He painted the whole of high society all around the world. King Leopold, Baudouin as a child, and then as a king. My wife's father always carried an autograph book around with him and asked people to sign it when he painted them. 2 pages were entirely dedicated to kings.
When we
produced the catalogue for our exhibition, we wanted to find out more, and were able to trace 7 generations, starting with a family of Pewterers in Ghent, which is documented and whose objects can still be seen in museums over there. We found miniaturists, landscape artists, goldsmiths, architects, and we discovered that what they did is what we're doing today.
Is exact das, was wir heute machen.
I found pictures from an ancestor which I can almost superimpose on my own and see that same way of observing things.
Und es ist die gleiche Sicht vom Schauen.
There's class and strength in discovering something like that, and it gives me, and I imagine Lucie as well, courage to carry on at times when it isn't easy. Our ancestors did it, so if they could, so can we. Like a wind in our sails from those members of our family who lived before us, that's what inspires me most.
The best kind of inspiration is divine inspiration, an idea that comes out of nowhere. I cannot do anything to produce it. It is a gift. This is the most exciting and wonderful thing that can happen to me. The rest of the time, I'm just climbing the mountain from all sides like one does. Perhaps I saw something in a museum and I'm now trying to see, can I make it better or simpler or just more appealing to me? I might try a bigger size wire or a different mandrel. I make a new model, usually in silver. I know I've reached the top of the mountain when everywhere I look is down. And as Picasso said, when the muse comes, I want her to find me working. I like repetitive manual work. I like to have my hands busy. After a while of doing the same things, my fingers seem to know the work all on their own, which allows me to listen to stories. In my workshop I have hundreds of books on tape, read to me by great voices such as Martin Jarvis, Dan Hamilton and Tim Pigott-Smith. Some customers, sensing an energy in my work, have teasingly asked me if I weave these stories into my chains. Before a chain is finished, it has to be prepared for polishing. In most chains this involves making the soldering joints disappear and smoothing edges and things like that, so that it gets ready to be brought to life in a polishing process. But in the case of the golden serpent, this takes a very long time. It takes months. I always carry one with me that I work on whenever I have time. I call it training because I try to take it from chain to animal, or as close to as I can, and that is done by tightening it and then moving it again and tightening it, because I need to have it have movement as well as the body look. And when that is done, I'm cutting all the edges by hand, and we're talking well over 10,000 edges cut by hand. This is where a machine reaches its limit. But there is no limit to what hands can do. Or should I say, a peculiar brain.
I mean, I suppose they did it in the Stone Age too, you know, wearing snakes, but hers are beautiful snakes and beautiful cobwebs, and all this thing looks wonderful if you have a nice dress.
It's amazing that although gold is a metal, something so delicate can be made out of it. Something that seems to be suspended in air, like a spider's web. That closeness to nature is what impresses me most, and shows me that she is an artist who raises her jewellery way above mere craftsmanship.
Especially in this world, there is not just being a good artist. You actually have to be able to sell your work as well, and be able to be happy to meet your clients and to work with them. It's the same in the theatre. I mean, if I could just be on the stage, it would be easy, but you do have to meet the people that come and see you and that fall in love with your work. And it's the same with Lucie. She has that ability of being able to meet clients and inspire them and make them realize how precious these pieces are.
If I had to choose one word to describe it, maybe it's not an obvious choice, but I would use the word musical. For me, her chains are very much the equivalent of a beautiful piece of music, the motifs linked together, gracious repetition. There's a charm and an uplifting quality about her work that the finest music, I feel, possesses. Lucie is a person, maybe the woman who wanted to be a princess and wasn't, but who has the graciousness and generosity that the princess would have had, and the imagination to cast the spells that a princess would have been able to cast on her.